Sis got the system, stole everything from me easy. Only Shuangwen stayed. Till he killed our newborn to avenge her. Stood on her blood, one saved me back then, not you. This is your karma. But I was the one who saved him. Died with him. Reborn, the day I saved him. This time? Ran the carriage over his hands. Crushed them. Walked away. Sis. Waiting to steal him? Stunned. Welcome to my channel. If you like this story, please click to subscribe. There are more wonderful stories waiting for you to listen to. Chapter 1. I died on the day my daughter was born. On New Year's Eve, I gave birth to my first child with Shuangwen. It was a beautiful and obedient baby girl. As soon as she was born, she opened her eyes and smiled sweetly at me. The midwife, seeing she wasn't crying, tapped her soles hard. She pouted her little mouth in protest and let out a soft, delicate cry. Not loud, like a little fox cub. My heart melted, and I kept looking at my precious baby. It wasn't until the midwife reminded me that I remembered to call Shuangwen to see the child. According to custom, men were not allowed in the delivery room. But the wind and snow were so fierce outside, how could I bear to let them take the baby out just so her father could see her for a moment? I smiled and asked, why? Have you chosen a name for our daughter yet? Shuangwen took the baby and suddenly gave me a smile that sent a chill down my spine. A child born to die, what's the point of naming her? He threw the baby violently onto the ground. I had been raised with strict etiquette, and my words and actions had always been gentle and proper. I never imagined that one day I would let out such a sharp, desperate scream like a wild beast. I threw myself toward where my daughter was falling with all my strength. It was too late. The child fell to the ground. The swaddling cloth was soaked with blood. I knew that this newborn child would never smile at me again, nor would she call me mother in the years to come. My mind went blank, and a deafening roar filled my ears. Shuangwen's mouth moved for a long time before I realized he was speaking. He said, "Qin Shuang. It was one who saved me back then, but you poisoned her to claim her credit. I swore at Wan's funeral that I would avenge her. But you were too good at winning my favor, and I couldn't bring myself to kill you. Now, let this girl take your place. Remember to go to Wan's grave and kneel to atone for your sins. All of this is the karma you've brought upon yourself." Wan. Qin. My heart sank completely. Qin was my younger sister, and she was widely recognized as the most fortunate and beautiful girl in the capital. From childhood to adulthood, she effortlessly took everything from me. It wasn't until 4 years ago, when she died unexpectedly, that I finally escaped her shadow. But I never imagined that Shuangwen would blame my sister's death on me and spend years plotting revenge. I thought he was different from others, that he would always choose me. I held my daughter's lifeless body. She was so young, just having come into this world, and hadn't even had the chance to see the light of day before dying at her own father's hands. Shuangwen frowned and tried to snatch the child away. He said with feigned mercy, "We'll have other children in the future." No, there will be no other children. I lost my parents at a young age and, as the eldest sister, had to support the family and care for my younger sister, living a life of constant exhaustion. That's why I always wanted a daughter. I wanted to spoil her, protect her, and let her grow up happily, just as I had spoiled myself when I was young. Shuangwen knew this was my lifelong wish, so he chose to take revenge on me at the moment our daughter was born. But I have no guilt toward Shuangwen, and I could never forgive the murderer who killed my precious daughter. Shuangwen, come here. I turned the golden bracelet on my wrist without hesitation. This was given to me by an old friend before he died. He said, "Miss Qin, if you ever find yourself in danger, use this to protect yourself." I aimed the needle on the bracelet at Shuangwen. "Die. Go to hell and atone for my daughter." The silver needle, dipped in poison, pierced Shuangwen's neck without missing its mark. He opened his eyes wide in shock and stared at me. I sneered. Shenhui, I shouldn't have saved you back then. You don't deserve to be my daughter's father. The servant's screams and calls for the imperial physician echoed through the air. I remained unfazed, watching Shenhui take his last breath before picking up my daughter and walking toward the nearby courtyard. No one dared to approach us. This was the small courtyard I had built for my daughter. I had made her a small swing, planted a garden, and even created a little kite field. A wife killing her husband is a capital offense. I lay down with the child in my arms, placing her on my abdomen. My postpartum belly had not yet healed, still retaining the curve where she had been. She lay on my stomach, as if we were still together. I aimed the golden bracelet at myself. Before losing consciousness, the spilled lamp oil ignited, engulfing us in flames. But I never imagined that when I opened my eyes again, I saw Shenhui once more. Heavy snow covered the mountain path. I was driving the cart, while Shenhui lay bleeding by the side of the road. I had been reborn back to the moment I first met Shenhui. In my previous life, when I saw someone injured, I jumped off the cart without hesitation to save them. But as a weak woman, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull Shenhui onto the cart. Instead, we both encountered a landslide. Rock and snow blocked the mountain path. I had no choice but to find a cave and drag Shenhui inside. The two of us hid in the cave for over half a month. Fortunately, the carriage had supplies I had collected, so we didn't starve to death. But in this life, I watched Shenhui lift his eyes toward me, stretch out his hand, and beg for help. His eyes were clearly open. Why was he acting blind, unable to recognize who was saving him? So I pretended to be blind, drove the carriage, and passed over him. The wheels made a clunking sound, probably hitting some part of his body. Haha. How pitiful to encounter a blind driver. I had only gone a short distance when I heard the sound of the mountain collapsing behind me. I thought, this time we're really dead. Humming a tune, I drove the cart to a small village. Our group had originally set out to visit my maternal grandmother in Quiji County to escape the winter. Unbeknownst to us, we encountered bandits along the way. My attendants fought bravely to protect me, and my sister and I narrowly escaped with our lives. I left my sister Chinwan in the care of a villager and drove the cart out to send a distress message, taking the opportunity to purchase some food and clothing in a nearby town. At that time, Chinwan was still safely under my protection. When she saw me returning alone, the smile on Chinwan's face froze. Before I could speak, she jumped onto the carriage and looked around. Sister, why did you come back alone? I replied calmly. Who else would I come back with? Chinwan's eyes flickered. The villagers said there was someone injured on the road. I thought you were always kind-hearted and would surely save them. She shook my arm and pleaded. Sister, go save them. I shook her hand off. If you want to go, go yourself. And don't bring anyone back. Chinwan's face turned red. Sister, you know I'm always lazy. It's so cold outside. How can you ask me to go out? Besides, saving a stranger is so dangerous. Sure enough, Chinwan knew that the person who needed help was Shenhui. Suddenly, I heard a strange voice. Good luck, Lian system reminder, the task of picking up Shenhui is about to fail. Please complete the task in time. The voice came from Chinwan. They seemed confident that no one could hear their conversation and began talking in front of me. Chinwan impatiently said, If Qin Shuang doesn't save him, how can I pick up the slack? It's so windy and snowy outside. How can I go out alone? The system said, I am the good luck Lotus system. You, the host, naturally don't need to make any effort. Its voice carried an eerie, seductive aura. Dear host, you may purchase a cheat opportunity as usual. Of course. The price will be slightly higher. Wan agreed immediately. I suddenly felt an ominous premonition. Sure enough. In the evening, the village hunter brought back an injured man from outside. The village lacked medical supplies, so the hunter carried the man and knocked on the door of our small courtyard. He was a simple man. His face flushed red, asking shyly, "Sir, do you have any extra medicine you could spare for this young man?" Before I could answer, Wan replied in a sweet voice, "We do. We do." She had somehow changed into new clothes and applied makeup, her white fox fur robe accentuating her lotus-like face, resembling a divine maiden. Hearing her voice, Hui, who had been leaning against the hunter, struggled to lift his head. He looked directly at Wan without hesitation. Wan blushed at his gaze. She turned her head and said in a voice as sweet as honey, "Sister, let's save him. He's so pitiful." Hui finally looked at me. The joy in his eyes had vanished, replaced by nothing but disgust. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Hui spoke weakly. "I am the second son of the Shin Kingdom's Duke. If the two young ladies are willing to save me, I will repay you with my life." He laughed once. "And this young lady and the thief who knocked my hand off are so similar. May I ask if the young lady has left the carriage today?" Wan heard this and smiled even more broadly. She scolded, "Sister, now we must take care of Shingonzi." I looked at Hui coldly. "Next time I kill someone, I must make sure they're dead before I leave." However, thinking that a few words could stop me is a bit too underestimating me. I spoke calmly. "I did indeed go out today, but I did not see the young master. The young master is truly skilled with words. A few sentences can slander someone's reputation. This small temple of mine cannot accommodate such a great Buddha. Ha ha. Who saw me bump into you? Who can testify?" I glared at Wan. "And you? After your parents passed away, I raised you. Now, because of a few words from an outsider, you're eagerly confessing to my crime. Are you stupid? Or do you have ulterior motives?" Wan had never been scolded so harshly by me before. Her eyes filled with tears, and she muttered a few words to her sister, but she was forced to remain silent by my authority. In the end, Hui stepped forward to shield her. Hui said, "I won't bother you too. I just need some medicine." I coldly refused. Hui ignored me and turned to Wan, "Please go get it for me. I'll repay you. I swear." Wan was overjoyed and almost ran to fetch the medicine chest. But as she rummaged through it, she stopped awkwardly. For so many years, whenever Wan was sick or injured, I took care of her personally. She enjoyed the fruits of my labor. So how would she know anything about medicine? Wan looked at me for help. "Sister, come and see what medicine we need." Hui was shocked when he heard this and looked at her in disbelief. He blurted out, "How could you not know anything about medicine?" I smiled secretly. "You fell into my trap. Hui. It's not just me who has been reborn." The moment I saw Hui look at Wan, I grew suspicious. The way he looked at her was gentle and nostalgic. Not like he was looking at a stranger. Just as Hui exposed the fact that I had accidentally injured him, I took advantage of the situation, first forcing him to borrow the medicine and leave, then forcing him to ask Wan for help in getting the medicine. In my previous life, Hui and I were trapped in a mountain cave, and it was I who used the only medicine in the cart to heal him. Even if Hui had mistaken me for someone else, he wouldn't forget that the person who saved his life was skilled in medicine. Sure enough, the foxes had revealed their tails. After Hui left, Wan visited him every day. A few days ago, she boasted to me about how kind and gentle Hui was. But her expression grew colder and colder. She tested me to see if I had known Hui beforehand. She said Shenhui kept mentioning me. Especially the incident when I drove the carriage out that day. Shenhui pulled her aside and asked repeatedly. I denied it, saying that Shenhui was still suspicious that I had broken his hand. Wan then cheered up again, pouting her lips. Sister, you already have a fiancé. My marriage hasn't even been arranged yet. I truly like Shingonzi. Don't take him away from me, okay? As she said this, she snuggled up to me affectionately, like a little girl spoiling her older sister. But I clearly heard her urging the system in her mind. Next time there's a chance to exchange good fortune, remember to remind me. Shenhui is mine. The cost of exchanging good fortune will still be paid by my sister, right? I just get to enjoy it. I suddenly looked up at Wan. She jumped in surprise, but clearly thought I didn't know what she and the system were talking about. So she naturally blinked at me, pure and natural, without a trace of guilt. My heart grew completely cold. I admit that being constantly beaten to the punch for something I cared about wasn't without its resentment. But that wasn't enough to make me turn against my own sister. Besides, the root cause of my tragic past life was Shenhui. Wan was at most a catalyst. In this new life, I only wanted to deal with Shenhui. To fight over a man. Sisters turning against each other, even to the point of death. How unworthy. But it wasn't until now that I realized. Perhaps even earlier, when Wan used me as a sacrifice to bind herself to the system. I was no longer her sister. I was her blood bag, her thorn in the side, her rival. So I forced a smile and told Wan, I will never compete with you for Shenhui. Go ahead. Go seduce him. Go toward your predestined doom. I won't spare you or protect you anymore. A few days later, the village was flooded with carriages and horses. It was my maternal grandmother who had received my distress letter and sent people to fetch us. Leading the group was my cousin Su Qi. As soon as he arrived, he surveyed Wan and me. Are the two of you well? The word well had two meanings. First, were you safe? Second, had the two women wandering alone in the outside world tarnished their reputations? I nodded at him. Cousin, rest assured. Su Qi asked a few more questions about our recent circumstances. Among the young nobles of prominent families, conversations were elaborate and indirect. Having managed the household for years, I was skilled in such speech. But Wan, who had always been preoccupied with leisure, couldn't understand the subtle implications in our words. She grew impatient, glancing around restlessly. Enough of this meaningless small talk. I invited Shingu to join us in going to Kuaiji. Why hasn't he come? Su Qi furrowed his brows. This Shin. He found it difficult to utter the word brother. I interjected thoughtfully. Shenhui, the second son of the Shinguagong family. He has been stationed in a remote border town. This time, for some unknown reason, he suddenly returned to the capital and was severely injured. I emphasized the words unknown reason and severely injured. Su Qi immediately understood my meaning. As the eldest son of the Su family, he was set to take the imperial examinations next year. The political situation in the capital was crucial to him. Su Qi was about to ask for more details. Wan eagerly interjected. It was I who begged my sister to save him. Shingu is very grateful to me. She rattled off a string of details about her time with Shenhui, her words brimming with the shy pride of a young woman. The political winds in the capital shifted swiftly, while romantic entanglements unfolded. Su Qi tried several times to steer the conversation toward the question of whether Shinguagong's second son returning to the capital was strongly connected to the succession struggle. Wan kept interrupting. Shingu is coming back to marry me. The wedding is imminent. Su Qi furrowed his brows repeatedly before finally losing his patience. Wan's sister. Go play. I'll talk to your sister about something else. Wan felt disrespected, shot me a jealous glance, and stomped off. I pressed my lips together. In my previous life. At this time, I was still trapped in a cave with Shenhui and had no opportunity to exchange information with this cousin, knowing little about the situation in Kuaiji, which cost me dearly. This time, every step must be under my control. I had a serious conversation with Su Qi for a while. This stern cousin softened his expression, a flash of narrow-mindedness in his eyes. Sister, I didn't come alone this time. There's another young master who wishes to pay you a visit. If it weren't for him finding another mountain path, we wouldn't have arrived so quickly. My hand trembled, my heart filled with mixed emotions. I knew who the visitor was. My fiancé, Yu Lin. In my previous life, Shenhui suddenly disappeared in the cave. The mountain path was still collapsed, and I couldn't escape. I don't know how long I was trapped there, but when I had given up all hope, Yu Lin found me and carried me up the cliff. He carried me to the other side of life. At that time, I didn't have any romantic feelings for Shenhui. I saved him, yet he dragged me into this mess. I don't blame him for bringing misfortune upon me, it's my own kindness. Naturally, I couldn't possibly ruin the marriage arranged by our elders for him. Yu Lin and I had completed all the traditional wedding rituals, with only the final wedding procession remaining before we could tie the knot. But on the eve of the wedding, Qinwan died in our bridal chamber. The only person with Qinwan was Yu Lin. He didn't defend himself, silently admitting his guilt. A joyous occasion turned into a funeral, and the two families were completely estranged. Our marriage was also called off. After that, Yu Lin imprisoned himself in the family temple, and I left Kuaiji and returned to the capital. When I heard of his death, I was already an enemy with no standing to mourn him, and I was married to another man. Yu Lin wore a bamboo-patterned brocade robe and paid his respects to me and Su Qi. Su Qi exclaimed, while I was talking to my sister for a moment. Yu Lin changed his clothes. Yu Lin blushed instantly. I was in a hurry on the road and feared my clothes were disheveled, offending the lady. He was very courteous, glancing down at the ground and avoiding my gaze. Su Qi intended for us, the engaged couple, to get to know each other better, so he asked me to take Yu Lin to admire the scenery. In this remote mountainous area, not even a single branch of plum blossoms had bloomed. Fortunately, no matter what I said, Yu Lin responded, his demeanor relaxed and natural. If it weren't for the fact that Yu Bai's hand was tightly gripping his sleeve, so tightly that his knuckles had turned pink, I would have believed he wasn't nervous at all. When the villagers we passed by generously admitted that he was my fiancé, Yu Lin's fingers tightened even more. I held back a smile and said, "Young master, you'll break it if you squeeze it any harder." Only then did Yu Lin suddenly let go. Good. Now even his ears were red. He didn't dare look at me and only said in a small voice after a long time, "Miss Qin, let's go back." Humph. He's acting more like a proper young lady than I am. Just as we turned around, we bumped into Shenhui. Shenhui had just recovered from a serious illness. His face pale, but his eyes were bloodshot as he stared at me. He glared at my hand, which was still holding onto Yu Lin's. His voice hoarse. "Shuangwen, why haven't you come to see me all these days?" Yu Lin's footsteps halted. A man's instinct made him quickly withdraw the tenderness he had shown me and glare sharply at Shenhui. But he didn't confront him, he just gently shook the hand I was holding. His sleeve fluttered, silently asking a question. I said unhappily, "Mr. Shen, we're not that close yet. Are we? A few days ago, didn't you falsely accuse me of being the thief who injured you?" Shenhui looked at me without flinching, his eyes brimming with deep affection. "I know it was you that day. There was a small bell hanging by your carriage. The material was different from the bells on the market, and the sound was uniquely special. I recognized it. You once gave it to me. I was just foolish and mistook you for someone else. Earlier, when I had tested Shinhui with medicine, I had already planted seeds of doubt in his heart. In the days that followed, I allowed Shuangwen to seek him out, giving him the opportunity to uncover the truth. People are inherently different, and Shuangwen and I are as different as night and day. Shinhui would gradually realize that he had mistakenly identified his benefactor. He abandoned his wife and killed his daughter for the wrong person, destroying his own family and even risking his life. He thought he was avenging love with deep affection, but it was nothing but a complete farce. This is why he is now in such agony, regretting his actions. I felt a secret satisfaction inside, but on the surface, I scolded him angrily. Shinhui, have you lost your mind? I never gave you any bell. I gave Yu Lin a dramatic glance. You'll make my fiancé misunderstand. Yu Lin shook his head. No. He won't. He laughed. I'm different from certain people. Even if I'm madly in love with someone, I wouldn't use hysteria as an excuse to be rude and slander someone's reputation. That's truly despicable. Wow. You're good at scolding people. This is no different from accusing Shinhui of being crazy and spreading rumors about me. Shinhui's face grew even paler. In my previous life, I did indeed give Shinhui a bell. At the time, he was in excruciating pain, and I gave it to him to distract him. In this life, of course, there was no such thing. I signaled to the servant beside me to fetch the bell from the front of the carriage. In front of Shinhui, I tossed it, and the bell fell into the icy lake. Mr. Shin, don't use such lowly means to slander my innocence next time. Shinhui's eyes widened in fury. Without hesitation, he jumped into the lake after the bell. Everyone was startled. Yu Lin furrowed his brows and instructed his attendants, before Shingongzi drowns, pull him out of the water. Attendant? The phrase before he drowns was quite clever. Yu Lin turned to me and said, Miss Chin, let's go. On the way back, Yu Lin's expression was calm, revealing no emotion. He suddenly said, Miss Chin, you did this on purpose today. I was startled. Indeed, I had intentionally allowed Shinhui to collide with us today. Shinhui had just discovered the truth and must be both heartbroken and regretful. I wanted to add fuel to the fire, forcing him to accompany us to Kuaiji. Otherwise, if he returned to the capital as he had in his previous life and sided with the third prince in his coup, it would be much harder for me to seek revenge. I wouldn't give my enemy time to grow stronger. But Yu Lin knew nothing. He could only see his fiancée entangled with another man. I waited for Yu Lin to ask me questions, such as Shinhui's unusual behavior, or the nature of my relationship with Shinhui. I had already planned how to weave a half-true, half-false lie. The matter of my rebirth. I won't tell anyone, not even Yu Lin. But Yu Lin lowered his head to look at me, his pale lips curling slightly, and he only raised his sleeve unhappily. Miss Chin used me and then discarded me? I knew better than to argue and reached out to grab his sleeve. Our sleeves instantly became intertwined. Yu Lin's lips curved upward again. We walked like this for a while, and I sighed helplessly. Young master, your sleeve is going to tear. It doesn't matter. I brought several sets of clothes. I let go of his sleeve, but before Yu Lin could frown, I took his hand. The calm and composed young master jumped up suddenly. I innocently said, This way. The sleeves won't get torn. His voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. But he didn't let go, obediently letting me hold his hand. Shinhui indeed suggested that we go to Kuaiji together. My cousin, who was looking at Shinwan with longing eyes, agreed. Shinwan followed Shinhui everywhere, calling him Shin Get His and Shin Get Hat. Shinhui ignored her, instead playing with the bell hanging at his waist. To retrieve that bell, he nearly died in the icy lake. Chinwan immediately recognized it as my bell. She bit her lip and confronted me in front of everyone. Sister, you already have a fiancé. Why are you seducing Shingongzi? Everyone's expressions changed abruptly. I gave Suchi a look. He immediately ordered, "The second young miss has been injured recently. Take her back to rest." Yulin seemed not to have heard Chinwan's foolish words. He walked closer to me. "I hear that Miss Chin has a refined hobby of boiling snow and brewing tea. I brought some Lu Shan Yunwu tea. Would you be honored to try it?" Chinwan's face turned bright red, and tears welled up in her eyes. She cried, "You're bullying me. Wah." Seeing that she was about to speak again, I shot her a glance and said, "Cover her mouth." I nodded to Yulin. "We'll drink tea later. Our family is unfortunate, and we've embarrassed your eldest son." Yulin obediently turned and left. Suchi pretended that I had said the same thing to him and chased after Yulin. "Yulin! Yulin! Good tea! Good tea! I want some too! I want some too!" As soon as they left, the maids immediately took out silk cloth and stuffed it into Chinwan's mouth. Chinwan stopped crying and looked at me in shock, not daring to believe that I would treat her like this. I lifted her chin and slapped her across the face with a resounding smack. "Chinwan, make no mistake, you owe your life of luxury to me. I've been the one supporting you, making you the esteemed second Miss Chin. Do you understand? When our parents passed away suddenly, the collateral branch saw us two orphan girls as helpless and tried to expel us from the main family. It was I who protected Chinwan and the property left by our parents. At the time, Chinwan was still young and naive, easily manipulated by others. She demanded that I return half of the family fortune to her, under pressure from all sides. I gave it to her. Soon after, her relatives divided up her share of the property, leaving her with nothing. She came crying to me. It was I who helped her reclaim it and built it into what it is today. I promised that when she married, I would return half of the family estate to her. As for the effort and time I had invested over the years, I considered it my sisterly dowry. Unfortunately, she was both foolish and malicious, unable to distinguish between good and evil. After I locked her in the carriage, Chinwan was forced to behave herself for the entire journey. Shinhuai, however, was relentless. Wherever he went, the bells jingled, making his presence known. He tried to approach me several times, but was always blocked by Yulin. I don't know how many gifts Yulin brought him. Today it was tea tasting. Tomorrow it was jade appreciation. The day after that it was viewing famous paintings. In any case, he had plenty of excuses to lure me away. Shinhuai could no longer tolerate it. One day, he cornered me. "Shuangwen, you might not believe this, but in our previous life, we were husband and wife, and we were deeply in love until we grew old together. I know you love almond tea, and I know. I don't believe you. Mr. Shin. Your methods of spreading rumors are getting more and more absurd. Humph. To deceive me, Shinhuai will stop at nothing. He even dares to say such nonsense as loving each other until we're old." I glanced at Shinhuai with disdain. When it comes to family background, Yulin is the eldest son of the Yu family, a distinguished lineage, and the grandson of Princess Duanyang. When it comes to talent, Yulin was already famous throughout Jiangnan by the age of 15. And you? You're just the obscure second son of the Shin family. What do you have to compare yourself to him? Even if there was a past life, would I abandon a jade vase for a piece of broken pottery? Am I blind? Shinhuai's face turned a shade of liver-colored, filled with shame and sorrow. No, it's not like that. You and Yulin were incompatible, and the wedding didn't go smoothly. Later. Oh, so you were just picking up the leftovers. I adopted a haughty posture and delivered the final blow. Mr. Shin, let me tell you the truth. I fell in love with Yulin at first sight. And I will love no one else in this life. This time when I return to Huiji, I will marry him. You think you're worthy of me? Shin Huai, being a nobleman's son, couldn't bear the humiliation and left in a daze. The green-clad figure lurking in the corner, watching us, also quietly slipped away. I said indifferently, Yulin, you just listened in and then left? Yulin finally emerged. He lowered his head. Looking embarrassed, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just saw him blocking you and was afraid you'd be bullied. I didn't respond, turning to leave. Yulin followed closely behind. Don't listen to Shinhuai's nonsense. I've consulted many fortune tellers about our birth charts. They all said we're a match made in heaven. I said, you still believe in fate? Yulin, selectively. Anyway, don't believe those who say our birth charts are incompatible. They're all charlatans. I laughed. Yulin's face grew even redder. And his ears burned. Also, Miss Chin, I've liked you for a long time. He started tugging at his sleeves again. Ever since the first time we met. I've been smitten with you. When we first arrived in Kuaiji, my maternal grandmother was standing at the door with a cane to greet us. Upon seeing Chinwan, she embraced her tightly, calling her me dearest, and took her into the room to have a good look at her. Yulin and Su Qi both frowned. Su Qi whispered, Sister Shuang. Second sister used to send letters to grandmother all the time. So it's no wonder she favors her a bit. I raised my eyebrows. Chinwan is the last person who could sit still long enough to write letters. The one who sends letters to grandmother every month is clearly me. She really does like to take credit for my work. I laughed. Is that so? Then it must be that the letters I send every month don't suit grandmother's taste. However, I haven't seen Chinwan write any letters. Everyone present was sharp-witted, they understood my meaning perfectly. Yulin, who rarely lacked manners, snorted lightly. What a schemer! Occasionally, Yulin used some strange words, which he claimed to have learned from his grandmother, Princess Duanyang. Su Qi nodded that he understood. He hinted to me, there's a welcome banquet arranged at the mansion. If you have any requests, feel free to make them. Along the way, Su Qi had already fully aligned himself with me. I had far more leverage than Chinwan. Not to mention that because the Yu family was from Kuaiji, I would be marrying into the Su family. Su Qi knew who the best choice was. Yulin took his leave tactfully. He took Shinhuai with him, saying that his grandfather had invited him. Yulin's grandfather, Yu Yuqing, was not only a literary giant, but also the former emperor's teacher who had contributed greatly to his rise to power. Even though he had retired with his wife for many years, his reputation was still prominent. When he said he wanted to see him, Shinhuai had no choice but to agree. I gave Yulin a mocking look. Yulin warned me in a low voice. Don't see him. He's really annoying. Saying that you injured him and you have to take responsibility. Damn him. Harassing a respectable young man. I'm going to report him to the Ministry of Justice and have him arrested. I laughed. I whispered back, then we'll make him contribute to our wedding banquet. Yu Chang, who was so angry that the veins on his forehead were throbbing, was instantly appeased. Su Qi acted swiftly. At the welcome banquet arranged by the Su family, each person was served a cup of almond tea. Chinwan sat proudly beside her grandmother. Just as she lifted the teacup, she wrinkled her nose in a delicate manner. Grandmother, I don't eat almonds. When mother was still alive, almonds weren't allowed in the mansion. Even if my older sister loves them, I can't eat them. She glanced at me triumphantly, not noticing the smile fading from her grandmother's face. As I had expected, Wan had simply had the system change the signature on my letter to hers. Just like replacing the me in Hui's memories with her. Wan continued to complain. It's a pity that after my older sister took charge of the household, she no longer cares about my preferences. She always uses almond fragrance. That's right. I always used almond fragrance in the letters I wrote. The smile on my grandmother's face completely faded. She was old, not senile. Looking at the tension between me and Su Qi. How could she not understand the situation? Wan continued to complain. I heard that it was my cousin who arranged the banquet. He favored my older sister the entire way here. And now he dares to bully me in front of our grandmother. How unfilial of him. Wan was playing her role perfectly. Su Qi is the future head of the Su family. And he is both virtuous and talented. Whether genuine or not. Who in the family dared to disobey him? Su Qi smiled apologetically and called someone to replace her tea. The elders remained seated. But those who would rely on Su Qi in the future immediately stood up and rebuked Wan. Miss Qin has such a temper. It's just a cup of tea. Why blame our young master? We should treat guests from afar with courtesy. Yet some people dare to be so presumptuous. What kind of upbringing is that? I stood up to apologize on my sister's behalf. But before I could bow, Su Qi quickly stepped forward to support me. Sister, it was my fault for not handling things properly, causing the second young miss to be upset. Don't blame yourself. One sister, one second young miss, the difference in their status was clear to all. Everyone present understood and began to comfort me. Wan couldn't hold back any longer. With tear-filled eyes, she looked toward her grandmother. Her grandmother picked up the almond tea, took a sip, and said indifferently, I also love almond tea. I suppose Shuangwen takes after me. Wan stamped her foot. Just like every time she had an argument with me before. She didn't care about anyone else's feelings and left the banquet directly. But this time, there was no one to smooth things over for her. After the welcome banquet ended, my grandmother held my hand and admonished me. Since Wan is such a stubborn girl, neither the Yu family nor the Su family's young men are suitable for her. I nodded. Wan has already found a suitable match, the second son of the Shuangwen family. Before my grandmother could ask, I blurted out. Even if we become enemies, we can handle it. My grandmother no longer asked. She was an elder and knew what to meddle in and what to leave alone. She merely sighed over my mother's early passing. After this incident, Wan harbored deep hatred toward me. She refused to maintain any pretense of peace. When Princess Duanyang, Zhao, personally came to the Su family to propose marriage for Yulin, her jealousy was almost written all over her face. Princess Duanyang almost brought half of the Yu family with her. She looked at me with joyful eyes. Ah, this is the girl our little fish scale likes. She's so beautiful. She took off the jade bracelet on her wrist and put it directly on my hand. In my previous life, she had done the same. She said that giving me face was giving Yulin face, praising me endlessly without hiding her favoritism toward me. However, this time, Princess Duanyang also mentioned something else. She said that Yulin had brought a child from the Shin family to his grandfather, causing him trouble. Yet Yulin insisted that it was his grandfather who wanted to meet the child. Princess Duanyang was already quite old. But when she spoke of her beloved, her eyes still sparkled with the tender affection of a young girl. She laughed. Our little fish scales needs help from elders to deal with a rival, how unambitious. Though she said this on the surface, Yulin was the child she had raised with her own hands. And the love she felt for him was almost overflowing. Yulin had a wonderful family. They treated me well, hoping that I would treat Yulin well in the future. So this time, no matter what, I would not let Yulin end up like he did in his previous life because of this marriage. After Princess Duanyang left, Wan completely lost her mind. She desperately called out to the system in her mind. System. I want to redeem a cheat opportunity. I want to become Shuang. As for the cost, just take it from her. I held my breath for a moment. I heard the system tell Shuangwen that she didn't have enough points to redeem the character swap card. I exhaled in relief. As expected. I thought long and hard about what the price Shuangwen had paid for me. From her conversation with the system, she had always believed she had taken my fortune. But after carefully reviewing everything that had happened in both my past and present lives, I realized, at various banquets, I had meticulously prepared dances, only to be unable to perform them for one reason or another. Yet Shuangwen suddenly appeared and stole the show with a dance I had choreographed. At the end of the year, I worked tirelessly to distribute porridge to the poor, but rumors spread that it was Chen Erxieji who was the true benefactor. There was also the case of Shenhui being taken away and the family letter having its author's name altered. These were not fortune, but the results of my efforts. The system used manipulative language to make Shuangwen believe that she didn't have to do anything. As long as she took my fortune and gave it to Shuangwen, she could obtain everything. But the truth was, Shuangwen didn't know what she was paying for. She was simply receiving the fruits of my labor from the system. For example, this time I didn't save Shenhui, so the system couldn't directly make Shuangwen Shenhui's savior. It could only create new conditions for her. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Shuangwen herself didn't notice that since she redeemed the so-called cheating opportunity, the color in her face had grown paler, and she had become much thinner. What she was paying was her lifespan, and the time she had left was already running out. The system's voice grew tempting, but you can still exchange for another chance to snatch Yulin's opportunity. Do you want it? Yes. Even if it means sacrificing your life? Shuangwen didn't hesitate. Yes. It's always been like this. She doesn't care about what she likes, she only cares about how to snatch what's mine from my hands. Stealing others' hard-earned achievements. Watching them fall into despair and sorrow, while she alone enjoyed the joy of victory. The temptation of getting something for nothing was too great, ultimately causing her to lose her reason and moral boundaries. I stationed people to watch Shuangwen, keeping vigil until the eve of my wedding with Yulin. She began to make a move. This was the exact time when Shuangwen had met her fate in her previous life. To ensure nothing went wrong, I arranged for someone to meet Yulin. According to custom, unmarried couples are not supposed to meet before the wedding. Yulin hesitated, not daring to refuse. But once he came, he was afraid of breaking the taboo. It seemed that Shenhui's words had had some effect on him. I was dizzy from his evasiveness. So I said, "If you don't want to face me, then turn your back to me." He really turned his back to me and refused to look at me. This made me laugh. Before long, a servant brought a small note, saying it was from Miss Chen for Yulin. Upon opening it, I recognized my own handwriting. The letter invited Yulin to meet me in our wedding chamber, without bringing any attendants. I instructed, "Take this letter to Shenhui." I've kept Shenhui around until today. This is exactly what I've been waiting for. I promised Shuangwen I wouldn't take her Shenhui, so I naturally have to let her have her wish. As the time mentioned in Shuangwen's letter approached, the sky grew dark. I prepared to go out and watch the final act of the play I'd been eagerly anticipating. The little tale Yulin wanted to follow. I frowned. Go home. He couldn't afford to make a single mistake tonight. Yulin refused stubbornly, pouting. "You're meeting Shenhui at night and you want me to stay out of the way? All right," I said. "Stay close to me." Yulin quickly grabbed my hand. I worried that I wouldn't be comfortable staying with the elders. Yulin had prepared the wedding chamber not at the Yu residence but in an adjacent mansion. Probably because of the system, there were no servants in the main courtyard at that moment. Yulin and I hid outside the window. Inside, Shuangwen was wearing her wedding dress. applying makeup in front of the mirror. Moments later, Shenhui entered. Qinwan was sitting with her back to him. Shenhui didn't recognize that it wasn't me. He looked delighted. "Shuangwen, you still can't let go of me." Qinwan heard the voice and stood up in a panic. Shenhui had already embraced her, and his kisses fell on her neck. I caught sight of an incense burner burning in the far corner of the room. Before I could warn him, Yulin covered my nose with a cold expression. He whispered, "It's something bad. I've been trained since I was a child." "It's nothing." Inside the room, Shenhui's eyes were already unfocused. "Shuangwen, in this life, I'll treat you well. We'll have." The incense in the room was lit by Qinwan herself. She inhaled the most, and her resistance gradually weakened. Half of her face was filled with desire, the other half with despair. "Shenhui, why are you the one? Why? Even if it's you, are you calling out Qin Shuang's name?" She mustered all her strength and thrust the golden hairpin from her temple toward Shenhui. Unfortunately, before she could reach him, she collapsed in agony. I heard the system casually notify, "Host's lifespan has been exhausted." The system is now unlinking. Qinwan froze. What does lifespan exhausted mean? Shouldn't it be my sister instead? The system replied dismissively, "Just assume she wasn't willing." No matter how much Qinwan called out, it didn't respond. Shenhui continued to kiss Qinwan's neck like an animal, completely unaware of the convulsions caused by her impending death. Qinwan was utterly desperate, clinging desperately to the word unwilling in her confusion. Her eyes filled with hatred. She screamed hoarsely, "My sister betrayed me." I stepped out of the shadows, meeting her gaze. I ignored her and kicked Shenhui, who was about to continue, knocking him unconscious, preventing him from truly violating Qinwan. Revenge is revenge. But as women, I wouldn't stoop so low as to let her be humiliated even in death. Qinwan's expression of hatred froze. I spoke calmly. "I never actively harmed you. Every step you took to get here was your own doing." Whether she believed it or not, I knelt down and gathered her clothes. Qinwan's consciousness was already fading. She couldn't recognize people or hear words clearly. She stared blankly into the void, struggling to extend her hand, and spoke in broken words. "Sister, save me." She had betrayed me so many times. Yet in her final moments, she instinctively knew that the only person she could turn to was her sister. Only her sister had always protected her. But she never cherished it. My heart remained calm. Only after she had stopped breathing did I close her eyelids. I whispered, "I will blame all the mistakes on Shenhui, so you can leave this world clean and pure." This was my final act of protection for her, even though she couldn't see me anymore. I didn't look back at Yulin, who had witnessed the entire incident. He was a smart man. He must have realized that I knew about Qinwan's scheme tonight, and he probably wasn't even surprised by his own sister's death. But I didn't want to hide myself. This was who I was. I can't be a virtuous mistress. Whoever wrongs me, I will seek revenge. I said coldly, "Yu Chang, you can still call off the engagement now. You can say it's because of my poor character." Before I could finish, Yulin interrupted me. He was so desperate he lost his composure. "This is the wedding chamber I've meticulously prepared for years. Someone died here, and I'm already falling apart. What did I do wrong to lose my bride?" He grabbed the small incense burner with one hand and pulled me up with the other. "Let's go." We leaped into the night. Soon, the people Qinwan had arranged to catch us in the act pushed open the door. They would see the stiff Shenhui and the lifeless Qinwan. Yulin pulled me away, avoiding everyone's gaze, and sent me back to the Su mansion. He spoke first, "You have a lot to handle later. I'll leave first." His tone was as cold as when I had just said I could call off the engagement. I sighed, "I'm sorry for ruining your wedding chamber. Before he could get angry, I added, so, tomorrow, I won't let anyone ruin our wedding. Yulin's tense expression relaxed. He pulled out a small incense burner from his sleeve, looking helpless. You wanted Chinwan to leave with a clean slate, right? I'll take the incense burner and dispose of it. Tonight. I am your alibi and your accomplice. He reached out with his other hand and quickly tidied my hair, which had become disheveled from running. His tone gentler than the evening breeze. If you hadn't intervened, I wouldn't have been prepared. The person who appeared in the bridal chamber tonight would have been me. I wouldn't have been swayed by Chinwan Qing, but I wouldn't have been able to respond quickly to her death either. Don't worry. I know you didn't harm her. Shuang. Thank you for protecting me. The gentle young master smiled softly. Focus on handling matters over there. Leave the rest to me. He pulled out a gold bracelet from his robe and slipped it onto my wrist. It contains poison needles for self-defense. Use it carefully. I stared at him in shock. I said, after everything is over, I'll tell you the truth. Yulin nodded. All right. No rush. On Chinwan's side, only the Su family members had arrived. Su Qi quickly took control of the situation. He sent someone to secretly bring me here without alerting my grandmother. Su Qi looked troubled. I guess that Chinwan must have sent someone to tell him that Yulin had made improper advances toward Xiao in the bridal chamber. He rushed over. Though fortunately it wasn't Yulin. But Chinwan was dead. This matter must be resolved. I spoke up to establish the facts: Shenhui attempted rape and attempted murder. Su Qi tacitly agreed with my statement. Should we report this to the authorities now? I said, no. Tomorrow is my wedding. Don't cause a commotion. Write a letter to the eldest son of the Shen family in the capital explaining the situation. Yulin is already aware of this. He said he has entrusted the matter entirely to me and that I should use the Yu family's influence to resolve it. Su Qi sighed in relief, seeing the hatred in my eyes toward Shenhui. As if I wanted him dead. He thought I was seeking revenge for my sister. Out of consideration, he left a servant outside the door and departed first. Shenhui was bound and lying on the ground, his face pressed against the floor in disarray. Now it was his turn to defend himself, claiming he didn't kill Chinwan. He pleaded with me. I didn't do it. Believe me. I laughed. I whispered, is that so? When I said Chinwan wasn't killed by me, why didn't you believe me? Shenhui looked at me in shock. You too. I slapped him hard several times until his teeth fell out before stopping. In my previous life, if I hadn't been so weak after childbirth, you wouldn't have died so easily. Allowing you to be reborn is truly divine justice. I grabbed his hair and pulled him up until he was kneeling. Someone, bring the second young miss over here. The servants outside carried Chinwan's body inside, under Shenhui's terrified gaze. I sat down on the main seat. Chinwan wanted to be your wife before she died. As for me, I loved my younger sister dearly and couldn't bear for her to die with regrets. You've always regretted not marrying her, haven't you? Tonight, I will grant you both permission to marry. Fortunately, Chinwan was still wearing her wedding gown. The servants tore the red silk decorations from the window lattice and tied them around Shenhui's body. The groom and bride took their places. I shouted, first, bow to heaven and earth. The servants pressed Shenhui's head and Chinwan's corpse down toward the door. Second, bow to your parents. My parents were deceased. So as the eldest sister, I accepted the bow with composure. Now, bow to each other as husband and wife. Shenhui struggled desperately, but he couldn't escape the 4 hands holding him down. He was humiliated as his head was forced down, and his forehead touched Chinwan's corpse. Unable to control himself, he turned his head and vomited. I laughed. Brother-in-law, you should be happy. Why aren't you? The timid servants trembled in fear. while the bolder ones turned pale. But when I scattered the golden beans in my hand, they happily gathered around Shenhui and shouted congratulations. I ordered, "Take Shingongzi to the bridal chamber. My sister is dead. As her husband, it is your duty to mourn her for 7 days by her body." Shenhui was terrified. He reached out desperately, trying to grab my robe to beg for mercy. I stepped on his hand. It was this hand that killed my beloved child. I crushed it, laughing. "I am going to marry now. I told you, didn't I? If Yulin hadn't met with an accident, you wouldn't have stood a chance." The next day was a fine day. Spring had arrived in Jiangnan, and a few peach blossoms were in bloom. Yulin, dressed in red, held my hand and led me into the Yu family home. Overnight, he had transformed the courtyard where he had grown up into a wedding chamber. The bridal procession, the wedding carriage, the changing of seats, the sharing of the bed, the joining of the cups. Every detail was done to give me face. But he was still so nervous that his palms were sweaty, afraid of offending me in any way. Even when the curtains were lowered and the flower candles were lit, he asked me step by step. I was just a girl, how could I dare to reply? The next morning, he embraced me in his arms, slowly combing my hair, cleansing my face, and drawing my eyebrows. He did it beautifully. He said he had seen his grandfather do this for his grandmother and his father do this for his mother since he was a child. He had practiced it many times in his heart. Now he could finally draw it on the face of the one he loved. The sunlight was clear and gentle, falling on his face, quietly. My heart was also quiet. After everything was over, I understood why Yulin had never defended himself in my previous life. How could he have said anything? Should he say that Qin Shuang had invited him to the wedding chamber? Or should he say that Qinwan had called out before she died, accusing her sister of harming me? Between him and me, only one could be innocent. He chose me. After the wedding was cancelled, when I boarded the ship to leave Kuaiji, Yulin came to bid me farewell. In just a few days, he had grown noticeably thinner, his face filled with sorrow. But he forced a smile and handed me a gold bracelet, saying it was a parting gift. It was supposed to be one of the wedding gifts. Yulin said he would soon uncover the truth and clear his name, begging me to believe him. As for the marriage, he said nothing more. We both knew that a life stood between us, and the vows we had once made could never be fulfilled. We could only look at each other in silence, each keeping our thoughts hidden in the vast expanse of mist and waves. Unaware of the truth, I boarded the boat and never looked back at him once. Perhaps it was because I still harbored hope, hoping he would return with evidence to meet me again. But neither of us, unaware of the existence of the system, could have imagined that the truth would never be uncovered. The stain of shame could not be washed away, and the bonds of marriage could not be renewed. That was the last time we saw each other in our lives. He had no reason to stay, and I had no reason to look back. After that, I waited for 3 years, until my heart was broken. Just then, Shenhui passionately proposed marriage to me. He didn't care about all the rumors about me and firmly believed in me. I was too tired. I wanted to start a new life and have a new family. I agreed. When the news of Yulin's death reached me, he had become a name I could no longer utter. Only the gold bracelet I wore on my wrist reminded me that once there was a man who had gazed at me so sorrowfully by the riverbank. The love and sorrow in his eyes filled my boat. Princess Duanyang said she wanted to go on a honeymoon after the wedding, but Yulin said he would follow his grandmother's wishes. My grandfather, who had been deceived for so long, sneered that according to tradition, the wedding leave was only 7 days. But Yulin pretended not to hear. He held me tightly for a long time. A place of tenderness, a grave for fierce women. By the time I thought of Shenhui again, 3 months had already passed. Luckily, I almost let him die directly. Shenhui was locked in a dungeon by my orders and tortured day and night. He had hated, resented, and cursed me. When I told him that the Shin family in the capital had abandoned him, his expression grew ashen. But he still insisted on living. I asked, "What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the system?" Shenhui suddenly looked up. "In my previous life, Yu Lin deceived everyone. No one believed that Chenwan's death had anything to do with me. Yet you insisted that I was the one who killed Chenwan. Who told you I killed Chenwan? And who helped you rise from a lowly commoner in a border town to a second-rank minister in just a few years? Your legitimate older brother was also a highly capable man. Yet after you returned to the capital, everything went wrong for him. And he eventually lost his life, believing a system full of lies. You and Chenwan are truly as foolish as each other." Shenhui's eyes were bloodshot. And his expression was crazy, but it's definitely not an ordinary thing. "Since you know about it, let me go. Or else wait until I..." "Wait until what?" "Coincidentally, on the day you and your sister finished the wedding ceremony, something calling itself a system came to me and said it could help me fulfill my dream." Shenhui trembled, staring at me intently. I said, "It's on me now. Unfortunately, I don't need it. So it can't gain energy. It can only rage helplessly in my mind day and night, slowly weakening until it dies. Just like you." The last glimmer of light in Shenhui's eyes faded. I smiled. "But you're far more useful than the system. Though we were both reborn. I was a woman and knew little of court affairs. Shenhui was different. I wouldn't let him die until I'd squeezed every last bit of information from him. I ordered, 'Torture him.' Yu Lin was about to take up his official post. I wanted him to be safely in theft as a marquis and minister, and live out his life of splendor and prosperity. Shortly after our marriage, everything Yu Lin had done was told to me by his family, who were also my family. For example, the marriage contract between Yu Lin and me was something he had requested himself. When I was unaware, a young man had seen me. From that day on, he couldn't stop thinking about me, day and night. Another example is that every year, Yu Lin would make gifts for me with his own hands and secretly place them in the New Year's gifts sent to the Su family in the capital. He never cared about the fame his fiancée's younger sister had gained in the capital. He only saw Chen Shuang, just like the first time they met. I gave Yu Lin all the intelligence I had obtained from Shenhui. I also told him about the system, intending to use it to explain Chenwan's death. He trusted me, so I couldn't let him down. Yu Lin got angry with me for the first time. He said that such an evil thing shouldn't be risked for. As he spoke, he scared himself into tears. He said, "Chen Shuang, I really like you." I said I knew. So I gave him this information not because I wanted to repay him. He gave me a peach, and I returned it with jade. Even if he doesn't repay me, I will always cherish our friendship. After Yu Lin learned about what happened between me and Shenhui in our previous lives, he rushed into the dungeon and slashed Shenhui 99 times. He held me tightly, his eyes red with tears. He said it didn't matter. That adorable girl would definitely know that I was the best mother in the world and choose me again. He even got caught by me secretly eating a folk remedy to have a daughter. I don't know which remedy worked, but I really gave birth to a daughter. She was very obedient and beautiful, opening her eyes and smiling at me the moment she was born. On New Year's Eve, I gave birth to my first child with Shenhui. Me. She was the first female infant in the Yu family for generations, and she would be spoiled by everyone. She is a one-of-a-kind treasure. Yu Lin pulled me and said, "Ah, Shuang, look. I told you. She'll come back. This time, both father and mother love her very much." At that moment, tears streamed down my face. I said, "Yes. I love you too. You Lin. The end.